go! Back in the saddle again. Wednesday night delight. We are here. Fantasy football affair full of yum-yums in the dynasty of the AFC North. But I'm not here alone, baby. FF Bourbon Dude, Bradley Stickler, fresh off the expo. What's happening, brother?
Oh, I'm living the dream as always. I changed it up a little bit tonight. I'm drinking beer instead of bourbon, so I'm going against the grain a little bit for myself. But my kids missed me, so we've been watching movies galore. Tonight, Jungle Cruise, so a new Disney flick with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in it. If you haven't seen it, it's hilarious. You got to check it out. So you can get it. It's in theaters now, but if you got Disney Plus, you can watch it also. So it's pretty awesome. But I'm ready to talk some AFC North, man.
Woo! Ready myself. I've got a bang. Way to start it off. I got my downers. I got a little bruise. Just like Celine Dion, my heart will go on. Tonight is the night, though. Dynasty Rich is in the house all day. The wife, the kids. Oh, Dynasty Nerds, Dynasty Nerds, Dynasty. That's all we've been talking about. But tonight is the night. Let's welcome them in, the cream of the crop, because nobody's doing it better, baby. What's up, Rich?
How we doing, fellas? It's only Finn. I'm here. I just had Fantasy Affair in my studio this past weekend. Brian was down here. We were recording some stuff here in the studio. Got to spend all weekend with you guys up there in Canton. It was a great weekend. Brian almost killed my podcast co-host Matt O'Hara with bourbon, but everybody lived. Everybody lived.
Oh.
Brian is the host with the most. This guy came in from Hawaii to party with us, to do it all, man.
Yeah, he gave me his personal lay. It's upstairs. It's upstairs right now. It was like, this is the real deal, and it's for you. I'm like, oh, Brian, I love you so much.
Brian, we love you long time. We love the AFC North.
I get a bottle of bourbon. I walked over to get a bottle, and it was all gone. I was wondering what the hell happened to it. Now I know.
Matt drink it all.
Now I know.
Every 5 minutes, Brian's like, let's go do another shot. I'm like, let me just finish this conversation, Brian. It was insane. It was insane.
Bourbon can hit hard and hit fast. I'm a beer guy, but Brian serves it up pretty stout. Dude, Rich, we know you're grinding, baby. Let's get right to business. Let's talk AFC North. We see the Browns jerseys, the Gaga, the Yum Yums. Let's talk quarterbacks. Let's talk Baker. Let's talk Ben, Burrow, Lamar. We're talking dynasty rankings, your sweet spot. So fill us in. We know Lamar's up on a different echelon. We got Burrow. We got your boy Baker. Fill us in when it comes to these two quarterbacks.
Yeah, when the two are we just bypassing Lamar Jackson because he's set in stone?
I mean, if you have one of these other guys ahead of him, I'd love to hear it.
No, I absolutely would not. I mean, you got Burrow. I mean, who doesn't like Burrow? I mean, he really started off pretty strong last year. They only increased that. I mean, this is somebody, obviously the offensive line is in question here for Burrow, but he has Tyler Boyd, who's nobody's talking about, who was a top 14 wide receiver, I think, going to week 10 last year. They had his former college receiver who was just shattered records when he was there with Jamar Chase. And of course, who doesn't like T. Higgins? So that in case with Joe Burrow, I mean, you have to anybody else would rank him ahead of Baker Mayfield. It just makes perfect sense. There's no reason not to do it. He showed last year before the injury that he actually produced at a solid level. I'm always biased. So it's never fair to talk to at Dynasty Rich or Rich Dotson about Baker Mayfield because he's one of the true loves of my life. I just can't turn my back on love. I won't do it. I can't do it. So, and I love it. And what I love about Baker is just, he gave me a lot to look forward to last year. Talking about a guy who had a different offensive coordinator for 4 straight years. You bring Kevin Stefanski. We've seen what Kevin Stefanski do with other quarterbacks such as Kirk Cousins, Case Keenum, showing the quality products. And what I really like about Baker is what he did in the second half of last year when he really settled in that Cleveland Brown offense. He was quarterback number 8 overall, despite some of those very terrible monsoon weather football games out there, producing with one of arguably the best running back duos and the best offensive lines in the NFL. 2 solid tight ends at tight end position and 3 solid receivers across the board. Baker Mayfield most likely is going to be quarterback 15, 14, 13, probably on an annual basis. But I do look at him with some finishes as QB1. I mean, what I really like on my quarterback is I want him to be smart. I want him to be accurate. I don't care if he could throw 75 yards from his knees. I don't care anything about that. The most common pass in the football field is under 20 yards. And what Baker is is he's bold and he's very accurate. When we talk about these great quarterbacks throughout the years and why they last so long to break records, guys like Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, they get the ball out quick and they're very accurate with the football. And Baker Mayfield drops dimes. So for me, I'm a huge fan of Baker Mayfield, not only because he's one of the best quarterbacks I scouted coming out of college, or the tape I've watched is probably a better term. He's also a member of my Cleveland Browns. But remember, he was QB8 last year. I mean, he's somebody that I said this before on my podcast. I mean, if you went from week 12 on, from that week on, he was better than Dynasty darling Justin Herbert, Pat Mahomes, Matt Ryan, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, Matt Stafford, Jalen Hurts. All these guys everybody else wants, but nobody wants to give it to Baker because, that's a run-first football team. That's a run-first football team. But for years, Russell Wilson's been out here finishing as, a top-end quarterback on a run-first team. Ryan Tannehill is coming off back-to-back top 8 finishes on a run-first team as the only NFL team to essentially run the ball more than they throw the football. So it's possible. You're talking about number 1 overall pick, a young quarterback in Dynasty who, to me, just screams value. Burrow, easy. Lamar's an easy choice. Shelf life, I'm still taking Baker, but you're going to take those rush yards while you got them in Superflex. So coming down to Burrow and Baker, I personally would take Baker Mayfield over Joe Burrow. But again, I say that as a biased Baker lover. But I think that tier is close enough for me because we do have to mind you, like the Bengals have a terrible offensive line. How comfortable is Burrow going to be back there as he's getting rushed by Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney or Cameron Hayward and TJ Watt, on a regular basis? And Baltimore's good defense. Like right now, they're saying it's early in camp. He's got to get out of that system. That's a very bad injury. So it's going to take a little bit to come back. I don't expect Burrow to be a QB1 this year. He might flirt with it. But if you ask me who's going to have a better finish in fantasy football in 2021, I would take Baker Mayfield over Joe Burrow.
Ooh, I like it. Now let's play Miss Cleo for a minute. Let's say 2022, 2023. You just mentioned Baker, QB8 before the monsoon, before the crazy weather. Is this going to be the year? Is it going to be next year? Do you see him breaking in from a points perspective for 2021? Is he going to be a locked and loaded high or low end QB1 around that range, or is this still a wait and see approach?
Let me just bust out my sweet succulent balls.
Oh, everybody! Yes.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's looking good. You might as well
hear about them all the time.
This is Mr. Brightside over here. Oh my goodness. Yes, QB1, QB12 overall, Baker MFR Mayfield. I love it. Yes. Lock it in. The balls have spoken. I'm telling you. You might as well write it down on your skin.
Mark it, dude. Let's get to some comments. Our boy Burkholder holding it down. Cue it up. Looking good, fellas. You can find Berkey all over the website, all over our podcast. Taking over, baby. Cowboys Blazer fan. Best Dynasty startup fan. And then, of course, those balls. Those balls are going to get everybody going. Let's keep it going. Let's talk Big Ben, man. Brad, what do we got here? Rich, is this a guy, is he completely off the cliff, or is this a value for a contending team, for a QB2 and Superflex? For years it's been him and Breeze as your home away, your spot starts. Is he going to return that kind of value this year?
Yeah, I mean, he screams value right now in Dynasty. As bad as you think his arm is, or he's lost weight, but right now it goes back to we're speaking Superflex, but in one QB league, you're searching. I always preach on my podcast how I had Drew Brees for 17 years on my roster, right? And how that's such a commodity. But on the opposite side of it, it's so much easier too in one QB leagues to stream quarterbacks because you could buy Tom Brady, right? You can get those older quarterbacks for pretty cheap necessarily and still get quarterback one numbers. And right now, Ben Roethlisberger, who supported 3 wide receiver 2s last year, just drafted a tight end in the second round. They still have Eric Ebron, and then you bring in Najee Harris, who's a very capable pass catcher. And if any quarterback knows how to utilize a running back in the passing game, it's going to be Ben Roethlisberger as well, who supported Le'Veon Bell at a high level. So for me, I think Ben Roethlisberger, albeit it only might be this year, if you might have a hole at the quarterback position, maybe you have somebody and you just get a little upgrade, or maybe you just want a little bit of assurance in Superflex. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger is available right now. And yes, it's a risk. But what player at the NFL level is not a risk? I mean, I hate when people are like, oh, that's such a risk. Like, what's not a risk? You're sitting there week 1 last year with Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley as you're starting running backs, telling everybody, including your mailman, that you're going to be the champion of your league because your running back's the best duo of all time. And come week 3, you're crying in your Cheerios, wondering where you went wrong. So everybody's a risk. Nothing's guaranteed. It's a I said this on my podcast not too long ago. Like, we're analysts. We're out here to give our opinion what we think is going to happen, but nobody knows, right? Like, nobody knows. We do our best to predict an unpredictable game. So for me, I always love to scream and find value. Where is the value in Dynasty? Because that's a good way to win ships. And everybody's always looking to make that big trade in Dynasty Fantasy Football, that wide receiver 1, tight end 1. But it's the small trades that really get you to the ship, right? That depth that help you week 15, 16, 17 now. So I think Ben Roethlisberger, if you can snag him up as a back-end quarterback, you're paying pennies on the dollar for somebody that could potentially give you QB1 numbers. He's going to throw the football. He's got 3 very high-end capable wide receivers and a 4th in James Washington, who's definitely viable there. And then I said, Eric Ebron, you have Pat Freiermuth, who I don't expect to do a lot, but he's still there. And again, Najee Harris is a very, very capable pass catcher running back. So it is very possible that Ben Roethlisberger throw for 5,000 yards this year if his arm is just okay, right? If he goes back to that old veteran and get the ball out quick like he did last year because he was afraid to get hit. Offensive line still in complete shambles, but again, these are risks I'm willing to take, especially in super flex leagues if I'm paying a 2nd-round pick for a guy like Ben Roethlisberger if I'm a contender, because if that pick's 212, you can take it all day because I'm taking that trophy and that cash with me.
Brad, hit us with something, baby. Talk about Lamar a little bit here. This is a banged-up receiving core. We're coming off, 2 years ago, pretty much MVP style, and now the weapons are just falling apart. There wasn't much in the cupboard. What are your thoughts, Brad, from a dynasty aspect with Lamar? Are you selling right now, or are you waiting for him to pop off?
No, I'm still holding Lamar. He's still a top 4, I think, is where I've probably got him, in the 4 spot. Dynasty quarterback for me. The rushing upside is just too much to move away from. He's shown you what he was the number 1, scored the most fantasy points in history with
Crazy.
A worse receiving core than what he's got right now, with the addition of Sammy Watkins. As much as people may hate him, the adding Rashad Bateman and Tylan Wallace in the draft, and my personal lovejoy on the Baltimore Ravens and Marquise Hollywood Brown, I think he has the tools, and we're not even talking about tight ends yet. Mark Andrews, he's got the tools and the weapons to be very successful. And just as we saw Baker Mayfield be better in the second half of the season, you saw Lamar play better. You saw Lamar make better decisions in the second half of the season. And it's almost like that quarterback light bulb may have started to light up a little bit for him. So I think he has the potential to continue to ascend and be the overall QB1 again this season. So for me, it's not even close. He's the top echelon. I'm with Rich in Baker. I've got Baker at number 8 and Burrow at number 10 from a quarterback rankings perspective. Now, I do have a Tim Couch autographed football behind me too, so that may also feed into that a little bit. But I want to see Joe on the field again. And even with how well he was playing, he was still only QB 16 when he went out, right? So that's not lighting the world on fire or anything. And I think Baker Mayfield, as accurate as he is, he's only got a 62% completion rate in the NFL right now, and he is much more capable than that. So I see his trend going up as well.
70% the second half from week 12 on.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, guys, real quick, we've talked the value of Big Ben. We've talked Baker, where you're getting him as a steal. So if you have to trade one of these quarterbacks in Dynasty, let's leave Big Ben out of it. We're talking Baker, Lamar, and Burrow. Which one are you willing to pivot off of? Let's go with you, Rich.
Is it Superflex?
Superflex League, yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to trade Lamar because that's where I'm going to get the most return. And if I have all 3 of these guys, I feel very comfortable with Baker. I feel very comfortable with Joe Burrow. And I feel like no matter who I move Lamar for, like one of those guys is my 3rd quarterback regardless. Because if I can get Justin Herbert for Lamar Jackson, that's the move I really would like to – that's the path I would like to go down. I'm willing to do that. I think a lot of people might be willing to do that trade straight up, I would assume, and I'm pushing Lamar. The thing is, like, I think Lamar's value can go, like, it's down slightly, but with, that whole team with a 37% drop rate last year, Marquise Brown not coming through, I do think Lamar could get his value back up and be QB potentially 1, 2, 3 overall going into like week 4. But I'm going to trade Lamar only because, one, I can get a quarterback I believe in more long-term, because I don't believe in Lamar Jackson long-term. And in long-term, I mean, is he going to be good for 5 more years for my fantasy team? Probably. And that's an extremely long time in Dynasty, but it's not as long as 10 years. It's not as long as 12 years. And I believe in Justin Herbert so much. That's the move I would go to. And I know I can't get Justin Herbert for Lamar or Joe Burrow. I'm not getting any quarterback probably upgrade for either of those players, but I know I can get someone I want personally for Lamar Jackson. And that's the reason I'm moving him. I'm just making a lateral move. That's the only move I'm making with him.
Absolutely. Brad, who you got here? Who are you moving on from? Are you cashing in on Lamar? Are you hesitant on Burrow? Where are you at?
Yeah, I think that's the only move, right? Lamar still has kind of that peak value. You can still lean on that QB1 overall season, whereas Burrow coming off an injury, people are kind of use that against you, trying to move him. And then Baker, you have to really dig into the stats to get somebody to realize how good he was in the second half of the season, and people may or may not buy that. So it's going to be easier to move Lamar and get, like Rich was saying, a lateral type move. Whereas what are you going to do? Talk somebody from going from Baker to Derek Carr? And that's not something I want to do on a dynasty team, but that's what people are most likely going to be looking at if you're moving those guys. So
my biggest takeaway from this dynasty quarterback experiment we just witnessed is Baker's probably a value in most dynasty leagues right now. People don't see him as an upper echelon quarterback, but he's a step away from being in that territory. So one of those guys that screams value. Let's keep on trucking. Literally, this AFC North running backs, good googly moogly. Look at these guys, man. The cream of the crop at the running back position. You can't go wrong anywhere here. So let's go ahead, my man.
Yeah, it's probably arguably one of the best divisions for dynasty running backs. I mean, you got everything you want. You got running backs that are under the age of 26 years old. You got running backs that dominate their position. They all have running back 1 finishes besides the 2 young guys and J.K. Well, not all of them. Well, half of them then, J.K. Dobbins. But, I mean, they're all high-quality assets that you're taking essentially in the top 2 rounds of a dynasty startup. I mean, you're getting Najee Harris second round. Nick Chubb's either going in a 1 QB late first to high second. J.K. Dobbins isn't really getting out of the second. If anything, he's going very high third. So the real question is, like, which guy do you want here? Like, I mean, I think the easy answer would be Nick Chubb. Who still finished. He missed over 3.5 games last year. Still finished as running back 11 overall. Dominates the position. Getting best offensive line. The only thing that hurts him is obviously Kareem Hunt, who also finished as a running back 1. Which is crazy to have 2 running back 1s on 1 football team. This is probably why the Browns are going to win the Super Bowl.
What a juggernaut!
Yeah. So, if you're like, hey, all right, let's go around for each position. All right, the running back position's up. You can only pick 1 division, and you got to go a different division for each round. Like, you're probably taking the AFC North as your running back division amongst dynasty running backs, because you're getting everything you want. Running back 1 potential from all 4, and you're getting that very valued and coveted youth at the position. Because, I think Nick Chubb's the easy choice, but after that, then who are you looking at? You're looking at Joe Mixon, J.K. Dobbins, and Najee Harris. Like, is there an easy choice among those 3 who you want? I mean, you can make an argument for all 3, and you can honestly probably put the guy who might finish the highest among all 4 of them, Joe Mixon, on the back end, just because of his offensive line and because of his age alone. So it's a really mixed group here. I don't know who you guys would want out of that mix. I would probably lean very slightly Joe Mixon, very slightly. Not Joe Mixon, J.K. Dobbins, slightly.
That's my biggest thing is excuse my language, I love Dobbins. I love his profile. I love the offense. I don't care about, Lamar Jackson. I understand it. But this guy just screams a tank, screams elusive. I want every piece of Dobbins I can get. So
he averaged 6 yards. He averaged 6 yards per carry. One of the highest rushing rates in the NFL last year. He had 805 yards on 134 attempts. I mean, that is gross. And people are like, oh, well, Baltimore is only a run-first team because of Lamar Jackson. Well, I've been saying forever, they're going to have to preserve Lamar Jackson, and they're going to funnel that ball through J.K. Dobbins. And I know Gus Edwards is there, and it always blows my mind when people bring in these running backs like, oh, they just paid Gus Edwards $3 million. Like, I don't give a damn. What is that? That doesn't mean anything. They're paying Case Keenum in Cleveland $7 million. I mean, we devalue Baker Mayfield. No, J.K. Dobbins is an elite running back. And when the team's out here all over on social media, the head coaches are talking left and right how they're going to get J.K. Dobbins more involved in the passing game. And they're putting out there on their social media. And we saw him do that in college and strive doing it. Like, again, most of your leagues you're playing in, they're PPR, right? Only your grandfather and Dennis that I know plays in standard leagues. So for me, I mean, that's where the value is when it comes to running backs. Running backs that now can only average 6 yards per carry, but they also dominate their team's receptions in that part of the game. So if you just take his attempts and you say double them to 260, you're talking about a 1,600-yard all-purpose guy with probably 65 receptions. And I don't know last time I checked in all the totals, but that equals mid-range to high-end running back one numbers. And I absolutely salivate over that kind of production. It would not shock me if J.K. Dobbins finished higher than Nick Chubb this year. So it's very well possible. I love him. I love him a lot. And I hate the Ravens, and I still love J.K. Dobbins.
The way I see it is I love Dobbins. I love Chubb. I love where you're getting Hunt. So here, let's pivot to, we know what we have in Mixon. He's going to get the carries. He's going to get touches. He's got an injury history. Let's go to this fresh rookie that just came in. Like I said, location. Looks good on paper. There are concerns. How do you feel about this landing spot? Brad, I'll let you go first with kind of just, we've talked about it before. Tell us about Najee a little bit, what your concerns are. And then Rich, take us home on that.
Yeah, look, this is a college running back from Alabama that was good at everything. The guy's good pass catcher. He's a good blocker. He's a good rusher. He's good at breaking tackles. He's good at forcing missed tackles. He can do anything you ask him to do. So I think he goes to a situation where he is the man. Benny Snell had like 6 touchdowns, and all of them were from 1 yard out. Now, that might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but that's what it felt like, right? When you watch Benny Snell, he's only scoring from 1 yard out. Anthony McFarland's not taking a lot of work. So Najee Harris is going to be a guy who's getting 240 carries plus 70 receptions, right? I mean, the guy's going to be getting that volume. The question is, how efficient is he going to be with it? I worry a lot about the offensive line. I worry a lot about Ben Roethlisberger's arm strength. Now, you've seen him in camp throw some balls that were pretty deep, but I want to see him do it in a game, because it didn't look that great last year. So I wonder a little bit if teams are going to force him to beat him, force Ben Roethlisberger to beat him, and by stopping Najee Harris. So I worry a little bit. Right now, he's my Dynasty RB14. I have a hard time putting a rookie running back in a RB, the top 12 until I see that individual do it on the field. I did it with Trent Richardson, and I haven't done it since because I got burned, because the guy looked to be everything that you wanted out of a running back coming out of college, and it just didn't translate. And as much film as we watch and as much as we believe in a player, there are things that we just can't plan for. So I want to see it on the field. I have tempered my expectations with Najee Harris just a little bit, and maybe that has just a little bit to do with me being a Browns fan. So
not me. I mean, the complete opposite. I love thrusting these young running backs up to the top of the cream of the crop. And I know Najee's going to be out there. It's like he's storming the beach of Normandy with tons of shit coming after him, trying to kill him because the offensive line's so bad. But, it's about, you mentioned like how efficient will Najee be because of the offensive line. I'm not worried about efficiency. The number I care about is how many touches is Najee going to get. It's going to be an absolute monster amount of touches because, I mean, if you want to talk about efficiency, Mike Davis last year averaged slightly over 13 points per game. He was not efficient whatsoever, but still finished as running back 12 because of the amount of carries he got. In the second half of the season, after Tree Cohen goes down, David Montgomery got involved in the passing game and rushing game and finishes running back 4 overall not because he's the most efficient running back in the game, because he got all the carries. It's why Myles Gaskin had such a good year. It's why James Robinson had such a good year. It's just what running back's going to not only stay healthy, but get all the touches in that offense. And that's where Najee Harris completely falls in here. He's going to get all the touches behind that offensive line. And like I said, if Big Ben's worried, he's going to be Big Ben's safety net here as well. So his passing volume is going to be anywhere from probably 35 to 50 receptions, which again, if you throw in his yards, and then he's just averaging 3.6 yards per carry because he can't get past the offensive line. But in that first preseason game, we saw him getting about 5 yards per carry in the first preseason game. I think Najee Harris 100% flirts with those running back numbers. And once Big Ben does retire, whether it be this year or next year, we don't know what quarterback's going to be there. If it's a re-quarterback, they're going to run that offense through Najee Harris. And they're going to have to build up that offensive line to protect their new quarterback and be able to run the football. So to me, if anything, if Najee has any slow start, it's a buy window. I'm all over it because I think he has future running back one value all over him for multiple years. And that's an extreme value in Dynasty because, if you listen to our show, the odds of you being a running back one more than once is under 17%. And those just not those. So when you find those guys on their first contract, we got to gobble them up. And I know we have this huge influx of young guys, but Najee Harris 100% falls in the category of one of them that I want. And I love to get these guys. It's how I build my Dynasty teams. I constantly are trading these guys or getting second contracts. So I can get these young guys on the first contract and I get more value on top. And I just keep pumping them through and I'm grinding them out because if I have enough high-end receivers and my quality tight end and I'm getting running back 8 to running back 14 numbers out of these guys, that's championship caliber numbers. And I think Najee Harris can give you just that. I think he finished as high as running back number 6 this year, all the way down to running back 15. I really don't see him outside of running back 15 if he does stay healthy because of the volume and pass catching he's going to get. So I love him this year, and I would take him probably as high as in the third round of a startup. I know I was just in a startup, and he was biased. He was a Steelers fan. He took him at 112.
Startups, God,
we saw him go at the Expo at 201.
Yeah,
right? So yeah.
It's where he is, and to me, that's value because I understand, Brad. You're saying the risk, but those are risks you have to take on these kind of players. You know what I mean? Because they're just too hard to get. Because nobody's, one of these guys breaks out. I mean, good luck going to trade for Antonio Gibson today. It's so hard to get these guys on your roster. It's a reason why everybody is so desperate in Dynasty for youth, and we know these wide receivers. Guys like Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, they scream long-term production, but there's still a reason that we see Javonte Williams, Travis Etienne, and Najee Harris go ahead of them because we're all so damn thirsty for those running backs. And then if they're young, forget about it. It's Dynasty gold. It really is. The young dynamite running back is Dynasty gold. It's still the reason why you take Saquon Barkley so high in startups and you assume all the risk if you're not finishing a running back one in back-to-back years after his rookie running back one overall finish, because having a guy who's 23 years old, 24 years old that give you that production is just invaluable to any team that's really trying to win a championship.
All right, I'm going to close it with one other. I think we all know Kareem Hunt is the value where you can get him, what you can trade to get him. Rich, Brad, last thing. Who do you have more shares of, Mixon or Hunt?
I have more Mixon shares personally. I'm 20 leagues. I got more Mixon. I have a couple of Hunt shares too, but I do have more Mixon. And I would want Mixon over Hunt. I think Hunt's going to finish, even though he's running back 1 last year, I think he's really going to average out about running back 16, somewhere right around there. I think the craziest stat to think about with Kareem Hunt is he actually averaged more points per game with Nick Chubb in the lineup compared to when Nick Chubb was out of the lineup. Granted, it was only 0.1 points, but it's still more points.
Hey, that makes all Browns fans happy right there. Brad, what about you, man? Do you have some Hunt shares or is it all Mixon for you?
Yeah, no, I'm actually probably right at 50-50, to be honest. I am very high on Joe Mixon, mainly because of the loss of Giovanni Bernard. I believe he is now the sole person in that backfield. And if health can stay on his side, this guy, you hear people talk about he's a function of his offensive line. He was still top 10 in forced missed tackles. He was still top 10 in yards after contact per attempt. This kid is really damn good at the running back position. The health is the issue. And if he can get that under wraps, I think the volume, both rushing and receiving, is going to be there for him to be an RB1. Kareem Hunt isn't going to get that rushing upside, but he's going to get that PPR bump because he's going to get those catches. I think he's in that RB, realistically that 15 to 20 range from season to season while he's in Cleveland for hopefully the next 2 years of his contract. So, but yeah, I'm about that 50-50 range for both of them right now.
Yeah, I think Mixon can flirt with like running back one overall. I mean, no, it's hard to flirt with Christian McCaffrey. It's like trying to flirt with like a supermodel. But I mean, I think the big thing too, you mentioned no Gio Bernard there, is even last year in his game, we saw his route running double essentially is the way they're using him, and they're still preaching that as well with him not coming on the field. So you can't underlook that ever. Running backs are in position not only get all the carries, but are viable, because we know Derrick Henry's got all the carries, but are also very viable in the passing game, because that's how you become running back one overall, is you dominate the ground and you get the receptions. And Joe Mixon fits that bill perfectly. So it's easily over Hunt, but a guy who has literally a chance to finish as a top 3 fantasy running backs in 2021.
Absolutely. Mixon's
People's
always
heads
been
would explode.
He's been the total package. I mean, he's done RB1 numbers.
And
it's just all the risk associated with it, and you feel like you're always getting burned, whether you're not or you are. In Dynasty, you can only get burned so much before you just lose faith.
I pray he finishes top 6, and then I'm immediately selling. I have a lot of Mixon sales, and that doesn't mean because I think he's have a downtick, but that's how I play Dynasty. A guy who's on a second contract and in the second year into it, and he puts up that top 6 numbers, I'm trading him. I'm going to grab one of these really good running backs from next year, and then I'm going to grab a guy who kind of like maybe saw a value dip this year. Maybe it's DeAndre Swift. Maybe it is J.K. Dobbins. Maybe it's someone along those lines. I'm going to grab that and the first for Joe Mixon, and then I'm going to keep chasing those ships.
All right, guys, let's move to receivers. There's a ton of receivers, some I didn't mention. So I'm going to ask you some questions. I think we kind of know where the value is on these teams, things like that. I want to start with the Ravens because this is Bateman's hurt. Sammy Watkins. Rich, Sammy Watkins. Can this guy produce a consistent wide receiver 2 numbers in fantasy football anymore?
He could produce his name consistently on the injury list. I could do that. Right. I mean, unfortunately, he's one of my favorite receivers coming out of Clemson. But I mean, he had that bad foot injury, and unfortunately, just kind of like Sony Michel in New England, like he just never came back from it. Like we always assume with the technology nowadays in medicine that everybody's just going to come back from their injuries. Well, the truth is some people don't, and Sammy Watkins' foot just never came back the right way. And he's never been able to explode and be that receiver he was coming out of Clemson. And he's just a guy. He's the Jag. You know what I mean? And that's fine. He's the number 1 receiver right now on Baltimore, the team that literally threw the least amount of passes in the entire NFL last year. And they got Marquise Brown. But the fact is, when Rashad Bateman comes back, he's the number 1 there. I want nothing. If your name's not Rashad Bateman, I literally don't want anything to do with anybody on my roster from Baltimore at the receiving position. And if you're going to give me a delicious sandwich for any of those guys, then I'm taking it. Like, it's literally Bateman or bust. It's double B's out there, because I want nothing to do with Marquise Brown. I want nothing to do with Marquise Brown. I know, Brad, you said that's your baby and a blanket over there. You can coddle him all you want, because
he's a baby.
I don't want him. I want nothing to do with him. He's a roller coaster player. Even if he does pan out, he's not a championship caliber player, because he might win you a ship, but he's probably going to lose you a playoff game before he wins you the ship. So to me, I want nothing to do with Sammy Watkins whatsoever. I know he's still under that 28-year-old threshold right around there, but he's had 6 years now to prove that he can come back from that injury, and he still has not done that. So I'm out 100% on Sammy Watkins. I wouldn't cut him off my roster, and I pray for that miracle, because, again, nobody here can predict the future, and maybe it took 6 years to heal, possibly. You never know. Maybe he's out there, practicing voodoo. Maybe he's getting stem cells. Who knows? But no, I'm out completely on Sammy Watkins. I think what could have been is always going to be what could have been.
If you're in a pinch, Rich, and you had to start Hollywood Brown or Sammy Watkins, it's do or die.
It's Hollywood Brown, because Hollywood Brown offers 30-point upside. He does, with that speed in the hands. But like, you're getting that. You're going to get that twice a year, maybe 3 times, and then his overall fantasy finish is going to be somewhat skewed if you just look at his overall finish, because he had a couple like big time 30-point games. all those players fall in that same category. Will Fuller, Marquise Browns, great players that really great players that got overstatement, but players that really help an NFL roster. I mean, you can look at Tutu Atwell could fall in that category, being taken in the second round for the Rams. Like, they help an NFL team, but are not necessarily helping your dynasty team or fantasy team on a weekly basis, because the best ability is availability, right? Like, I don't want to have to question if I'm putting your lineup. And then you get more frustrated because then you don't start him because he had back-to-back games where he had 6 points and 7 points. Then you put him on your bench. Then he had 30 points. And you're like, what the shits is this? And then you put him in your lineup. And then he has 4 points. And you're like, and he gets hurt. And you're like, dude, like, that's not good enough for me. Like, I want a good team with players I can trust, I can rely on come week 14, 15, and 16 this year. And he does not foot the bill. On a 1 week basis, of course you're taking Marquise Brown because he offers the highest upside. So out of those two, easily Marquise Brown.
So I just want to rebuttal real quick about Hollywood. I got to defend my position just a little bit, right? So when
17.5% drop rate last year.
What's that?
17.5% drop rate last year.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you can go. I mean, Tyreek Hill had a high drop rate, right? You can go all over the place with that, right? But where I'm at with it is, you look at what Marquise Brown did when you saw the growth of Lamar Jackson in the second half of the season. From week 12 on, Marquise Brown was a wide receiver 13 in fantasy. Marquise Brown in Oklahoma was at his best when there was a true alpha there, whether it be CeeDee Lamb or Mark Andrews. That's when you saw him produce big numbers on the football field. So now you have to believe that Lamar Jackson is going to grow as a passer for him to be relevant, right? Now, I believe that Lamar Jackson is going to take that step as a passer. And when you add Rashad Bateman to the mix, I believe he's going to be at his absolute best. Now, I'm not saying he's a wide receiver 1. Absolutely not. But could he be a career wide receiver 2? I believe so. I really do believe he can be in that 20 to 24, 15 to 24 range for the entirety of his career with Lamar Jackson.
See, the problem is they took Rashad Bateman in the first round, and I believe in Rashad Bateman, and there's absolutely no way in hell do I believe that Lamar Jackson can support 2 wide receiver 2s. There's just no way for a team, just for the way the team runs the ball and how they run that offense, and Lamar Jackson with the touchdowns not being there, because Mark Andrews is going to get all the touchdowns in the red zone, looks most likely anyways, besides Lamar or J.K. Dobbins. So the problem with Marquise Brown for me, Brad, is I believe in Rashad Bateman too much. So it's just, and I just don't, there's just no way with the influx of talent we've seen in football of youth, nonetheless, over these last 3 years, let alone the veterans we already have out there, that Marquise Brown's going to sneak his way into that wide receiver top 24 categories. And again, I mostly blame Rashad Bateman, who I think can sneak in that category. Because again, it's easy to sit here and say this so many times. We can sit here all day like, oh, he's a wide receiver 2. He's a wide receiver 2. And then next thing you know, we just named 36 wide receiver 2s, and there's only 12 in the world. That's it. There's only 12 in the world.
Yep.
So, it's just, we sit here as analysts all the time. We mention these kind of numbers like, I think he's a wide receiver 2. Like, he could be a wide receiver 2. Okay, well, what other receivers are you going to put what other 23 are you going to put with him, right? Like, we have to remember there's only 12 of these guys in the world that exist. So, and we have guys within this division. The Steelers had 3 wide receiver 2s last year. So out of those 12, they had 25% of those wide receiver 2s on their roster, with wide receiver 16, wide receiver 22, and wide receiver pretty much 23, and Juju, Chase, and Deontay. So that's where Marquise Brown comes into me. It's easy to sit here and say the upside of a wide receiver 2. It's just I don't find that square peg fit into that round hole. Now, if you want to talk Rashad Bateman, I can start getting my wood laid out and start, sanding that down a little bit, and we'll get that bad boy in there. But I'm not sanding down a titanium peg of Marquise Brown. Could he have some weeks again? Those numbers you mentioned, can that pan out? Yeah, but there's too many other wide receivers I like that are coming back here. I mean, I like Corey Davis ahead of him to finish better than Marquise Brown, and that screams value to me. Guys along those lines. So, and there's other rookies out this year. I mean, if we sat here, Brad, right now, is like, ooh, who'd you rather have, Marquise Brown or Elijah Moore? Are you going to tell me you want Marquise Brown?
I would right now. Yeah. Right now in my dynasty rankings, I have him ahead of Elijah Moore. I do. Wow. I really like, I have like this weird lovejoy for Marquise Brown, and if
Matt,
I can see Ben Roethlisberger throw,
can we mute him? Can we mute Brad?
if
Matt?
I can see Ben Roethlisberger throw for 3,800 yards and support 3 wide receiver 2s, why can't Lamar Jackson throw for 3,800 yards and support multiple?
Listen, that's your guy, man, and that's what you do. You stand behind your guys, and I love it. Yeah, that's fine. We're just going to completely 100% agree to disagree on this.
And I'm sure I'll get muted later on.
Nothing you can do.
I mean, to me, you're arguing flexes other than Bateman. Bateman's your prize pig. You're not moving him because of the injury, because of the draft picks you just spent on him. Let's move to these Steelers, though. They're all sexy. What about 24-year-old Juju Smith-Schuster? This is a guy who was the belle of the ball just, 2 years ago, and now everybody's just lost faith on the guy. Do you see greener pastures? Wide receiver 2 is a wide receiver 2. Like you said, 25% of them belong to the Steelers. Is Juju a guy you're going out and buying because everybody's shitting on this guy?
No, I've been shitting on Juju since he came out of USC. And everybody's like, oh, you're wrong on Juju. He had one really good year. I mean, he did finish as wide receiver 16, which might be the most shocking thing we see on the show, right? Like everybody's talking about oh, Juju, he's a buy. He was wide receiver 16. He was in top 25% of wide receiver 2s. He finished really well. But I don't know, man. Like it just worries me. Like Juju's route running's not as crisp as I would like it. His hands aren't as good as I like it. Even this year, I think his value is going to dip a little bit because Deontay Johnson was the number 1 targeted player on that team when he was on the field. Chase Claypool is their number 1 deep threat out there. For me, can Juju still be that wide receiver 16 on a year in, year out basis with that youth? And then maybe he leaves the Steelers this year and gets a good deal. Yeah. But he just falls in a category of me. Like, I'm never going to own him. I'm never buying the shares. I'm going to ask you, hey, is Juju on the table? What do you want? You're going to want a first. And then I'm just going to go from midnight to 6 o'clock and walk away. So, yeah, I want nothing to do with Juju, honestly, man. It's just that juice is not worth a squeeze. I would just rather invest somewhere else. I just don't trust him long term. I think he's a productive receiver. And if he goes to another team at the value he'll get paid, he'll probably be the number 1. But I can't get off of his tape, and I just can't get off of some of the things I saw without Ben Roethlisberger, which was his lazy route running and his hands. You know what I mean? It's just, come on, I need full effort from you 100% of the time. He's too worried about TikTok in my eyes instead of football. So I'm out.
Okay, let me hit you on Claypool real quick because this is another. Dobbins is one of my guys. Claypool's another one. Yeah. This is a guy that just screams fucking freak. Obviously, young, talented. Didn't have the snap share, all those, but they found ways to make this guy a weapon. Is this a guy you think can make that step? Obviously, you got Deontay's taking all these targets, but we've seen what DK's been able to do. Mm-hmm. If Big Ben's arm holds up, could you see Claypool making that next step as well?
I mean, obviously, his ADOT was gross. I mean, but you have to look. The only thing you have to worry about, obviously, if Big Ben's arm holds up and gets somewhat back to normal, Chase Claypool is the number 1 beneficiary of that arm. His numbers are slightly inflated with those 11 touchdowns, so you got to look for a little bit possible regression there. So that even though he finishes, as a wide receiver 2, that's somewhat skewed. It's kind of like LeGarrette Blount finished as a running back 1 that year because he had 13 touchdowns. Right. So you always be somewhat cautious there for regression and where he fills out. But for long term, I think Juju or Jace definitely has that upside.
I think what I'm thinking is the snap share. I'm thinking they're going to use him more. So that's where I see maybe the touchdowns aren't there because you got a Harris. But I'm just saying, to me, this is a dynasty guy. I love Deontay, but Claypool's right there. He's on that crisp to me.
Yeah, because but you see, they use two of those touchdowns came in the rushing game, right? So 2 of those were rushing touchdowns. We don't know that's going to hold up. He led all rookie receivers in touchdowns. It's just, can he take over? Will Ben have enough time to even get the ball to him to throw down deep with that offensive line? There's just so many question marks. Again, are they even going to throw that? Like they bring Najee in. Does Najee take away from all 3 of them? Right? Do they all go from wide receiver 2s to only have a 1 wide receiver through? So
they're hitting you hard right now, Rich.
It comes down to Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, who you want. And to me, I'm taking a guy who that team targeted the most overall, and it's Deontay Johnson. That's the receiver I want on the 2. And again, just because I say that does not mean I don't like Chase Claypool out there too.
Right.
It's just, if I had to pick one, I'm going to chase the guy who saw the most targets on that team in that offense. And I can live with his drop rate because his drop rate still produced wide receiver 2 numbers. So again, just like a running back, we want to see get tons of carries. I want to see a receiver who gets tons of targets. And that's where Deontay showed he can come into that offense. So for me, they both scream tremendous upside. I would love to have both of them on my dynasty roster.
Absolutely.
I'm taking Deontay over Chase Claypool, just from what I've seen so far.
Well, and that's the thing. But you look at the Bengals, you look at the Steelers. I mean, what are we really doing? We're looking at alpha receivers. We're looking at top 24 receivers if everything plays out right. So, Brad, we've seen Jamar Chase. Everybody's had pretty much him drop down from the press coverage to the rankings of having Devontae Smith just blow the truck up. I've listened to too many of Rich's podcasts and I can quote what he says, So at this point, is the rose off the pedal or the pedal off the rose here with Jamar Chase? Is what we got kind of with Burrow with the 65 touchdowns in college. Have we seen the best of Jamar Chase, or do you think he steps in week 1 and he's just an alpha?
Now Eric's gonna roll over when he hears this, but I'm sticking to my guns that T. Higgins is the man in that offense. I loved him coming out of Clemson last year. He's one of my favorite guys. He has that alpha level profile with size. And it's not to take anything away from Jamar Chase. I just think he's already done it in the NFL with Joe Burrow. Now, I know Joe Burrow did it with Jamar Chase at LSU. It's not the same thing, though, right? Jamar Chase has been off the field for a year, so that's going to take some time. There's been all these camp reports that I don't want to say you throw away right now, but talking about whether or not he can separate, and he's struggling doing it right now. The game is different, right? He was a very physical receiver at LSU. He used his hands a lot to create that separation. He's going to have to learn different ways to do that now because that's not going to work all the time. So I'm sticking to my guns with T. Higgins as the alpha there. I do think Jamar Chase is going to be just fine, but you can't discount Tyler Boyd either. And I don't believe that Joe Burrow coming off of injury is going to be able to create 3,000-yard type receivers that you're going to be able to plug in, week out. So you're going to have to pick one, in my opinion. And my choice is T. Higgins. One thing I do want to kick back real quick about the Deontay Johnson Chase Claypool deal, to just a side note, because I saw this the other day. The Pittsburgh Steelers had 13 red zone touchdown passes inside the 10-yard line. 11 of those went to Juju and Chase Claypool. You got to believe some of that red zone work is going to Najee Harris. Deontay Johnson had 2. Deontay Johnson isn't losing red zone work or isn't losing a ton of work to Najee Harris. So in my opinion, it's a Deontay Johnson type field, also strictly because of that red zone presence.
Nice. Good stat.
I loved the Des Bryant comp for Jamar Chase. I thought that was sick. I love the value with Boyd, and I love that T. Higgins could be the best one out of these 3. So I don't think you're really going wrong, Bengals or Steelers. Rich, unless there's something you want to say, let's get to the Browns, baby.
No, I agree I almost agree with everything Brad said there. I said, well, you mentioned value on Boyd. Again, he was wide receiver 13 overall going to week 10 last year. And go by and Joe Burrow, with AJ Green leaving, I mean, AJ Green takes away with him 19% of the team targets that are going to go elsewhere. Somebody else. And Joe Burrow did have over a 72%. It was like 72.7 or 8% completion percentage to every other receiver that wasn't AJ Green. So I do like the T. Higgins pick as well for the number 1 fantasy receiver in this offense for 2021.
Absolutely. Let's get to those Browns again, man. You got Baker Mayfield kind of disrespected from a value standpoint. We've got Odell, we've got Landry, Mr. Consistency and Mr. Superstar, but can't stay healthy. And then this new, sweet treat, Donovan Peoples-Jones, man. How excited are you, Rich, for Peoples-Jones? Because he is the talk of the town right now.
Yeah, and he should be. He's really having a really good camp here in Cleveland. He's dominating out here. He's winning the contested catches. at the catch point. So even when he's being covered, he's still making big plays here. We saw with that big catch he had for Cincinnati getting the W, the time ran out last year. He really is a talk of the town here in Cleveland. And we're talking about a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. So he looks really good. I mean, Jarvis Landry is Jarvis Landry. He's very consistent. He's been a wide receiver 2 up until last year. He did play hurt. I will mention everybody, he played hurt all of last year, and he was the number 1. I think Odell comes back and helps, takes some of that pressure off. I think Odell, all accounts are he's looking really good. He's finally going to be healthy. This is Odell's year to finish rebound. Probably be like that, like Robert Woods production, probably like right around wide receiver 13, 14. If his touchdown production go up, he can get into that wide receiver 1 mix. But I think one of the best stashes right now in Dynasty Fantasy Football, if you want 2 young names to stash on your Dynasty team, it's going to be Gabe Davis of the Bills, and it's going to be Donovan Peoples-Jones of the Cleveland Browns. 2 guys that in 2 years can offer you that wide receiver 2 production. And right now with Baker Mayfield, with Odell Beckham's salary and Jarvis Landry's salary combined with their age, somebody else is going to slide into that number 1 or number 2 role for Cleveland soon, and all signs are pointing due north to Donovan Peoples-Jones. So he's shown some really good upside here in Cleveland as an alpha receiver.
Is Odell a receiver you might be trading for if you're a competing team, seeing if you can get him cheap?
I have. I've been able to buy him for some first-round picks in some leagues for people just out because he hasn't really produced in 16 years. So, or not 16 years, since 2016. Since 2016. So, for me, if I can get him for a first, yeah, I'm buying him. I think the best name I want to put him to is like that Robert Woods comp without the production, essentially, because that's where I think he can get to right around there. Because I've been preaching literally for 3 years about buying Robert Woods and how he just screams value, because people again are like, oh, he's not a wide receiver 1. I made those small trades, but like, okay, he's wide receiver 13, 14, 15. That's a championship caliber player. You know,
exactly. And what you're paying for him, you're not paying wide receiver 1 price anymore.
No.
You're probably not paying wide receiver 2 price.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's just it's hard to picture stuff like that. It's in a vacuum. You know, like nothing drives me crazier. It's like, oh, I traded for Zeke and that's why I gave up. Like, well, if you gave that up, you should have got Kamara. It's like, okay, well, do you have Kamara in that league? Because
my league,
not budging. You know what I mean? So like every league's in a vacuum, and everybody values somebody differently every league. So there's going to be leagues that you could certainly get Odell Beckham for maybe 2 high seconds, you know, or maybe you can get Odell Beckham for an upside wide receiver and something. You know, I think he's definitely obtainable, and that's the most important part of it is he's obtainable. And he offers upside is wide receiver 1 finish, like not 1 overall, but a wide receiver 1 finish. The upside is there. He is one of the most elite wide receivers we've seen in the last decade when he's on. So it just comes down to will he be on, and will the Cleveland Browns throw him to him enough? I know here in Cleveland, Kevin Stefanski, the head coach, has been saying with a player of his caliber, we will make sure we have plays designed just for Odell Beckham Jr. because he's too talented not to target in this offense. So with that run game and everything, you would have to think it opens up everything for Odell Beckham too, because you just can't focus on him with the tight ends, with the run game, and with Jarvis and Donovan Peoples-Jones. So to me, he is a buy. He falls right in that category of a really good, high upside, the price is right kind of player. He's Bob Barker.
OBJ's definitely beat me quite a bit of weeks. I've remembered every single one of those pass touchdowns or just going off on a Monday night. Brad, you're a Browns guy. Landry, OBJ, who's your guy out of these 2?
I mean, Odell Beckham's got – it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for floor and a consistent play, you want to play Jarvis Landry, right? I think that's been proven over the last couple of years. You plug him in every week, he's going to get you 10 points, right, in your flex, something like that. But if you're looking for upside, then Odell Beckham has it. And I 100% agree with Rich right now. I expect a big bounce-back season for him. So I'm Odell Beckham all day long, and I've been trying to obtain Donovan Peoples-Jones for about a month and a half at this point, and I think the word's already gotten out. So I'd be willing to say that it's even next year, right? Odell Beckham has 0 dead cap next year. There's a world where they move on from Odell Beckham, and if they do, and they really like what they see in Donovan Peoples-Jones, he will be the X in that offense come next year. And that at that point, it's screaming value, right? Because I've been offering mid-seconds for Donovan Peoples-Jones, and guys are turning it down. So that people already see the writing on the wall that there's a world where this guy is the alpha in that offense, and as soon as next season.
Sounds good to me. Sounds like yum-yums. You got OBJ you can get for a discount. You might have to pay up a little bit for Peoples-Jones. Let's get to tight ends so we can put the women and children to sleep and go looking for dinner. Let's talk tight ends. The Bengals mascot at tight end. You've got Drew Sample. You got CJ Uzomah, Thaddeus Moss. Is anything getting you excited in Cincinnati, Rich?
No, literally nothing. This team doesn't target the tight end. They don't utilize the tight end. They run 3 wide receiver sets consistently. Joe Mixon's wide receiver 4 over the tight end. That mascot there has better odds to finish as tight end 1 on the team than Drew Sample. So, no, nothing gets me going in Cincinnati for tight ends whatsoever. Cincinnati, Houston, there's tons of teams out there. Jacksonville offers no value whatsoever when it comes to the tight end position, and the Bengals are one of them.
It's a cool looking mascot. Let's get to the Steelers. Let's talk Pat, for mouth. Eric Ebron. Eric Ebron's been a touchdown hog when he's been on point. Pat's getting the love other than Pitts. You got to be excited about Patty as well as Ebron. He's one of those streamer tight ends. Anything you want to say about these tight ends, Brad?
No, I mean, Pat Freiermuth has some upside because he, coming out of college, a good blocker. He's very much that Heath Miller type that the Pittsburgh Steelers had for a long time with Ben Roethlisberger. So you can see some upside there. But do I see him being a top 3, top 4 tight end for me in the future? Absolutely not. So for me, I'm not looking to probably invest in a Pat Freiermuth. I'm looking to try to move into some of these top 4 or 5 tight ends.
Interesting. Eric Ebron is Eric Ebron. He'll be a streamer till the end of the time. Let's go, dude. Harrison Bryant. You've got Njoku. This guy coming from Miami. So much upside. Just 3 years ago, we were making trades for this guy. I thought he was the next breakout tight end. We thought he was getting traded and he would be somebody else's problem, and he's still in Cleveland. And then Hooper. Hang him with the coach, Cooper. That's
Hooper, clearly a product of targets there in Atlanta. He's a system tight end. I am buying Pat Freiermuth, by the way, too. I think he offers upside of Mark Andrews, but won't be as good. But I think that's his upside. But I mean, in Cleveland right now, the tight end you want to own, I think for dynasty long-term value is Harrison Bryant. I think that's the best value there. Njoku does still offer that huge athletic makeup. The thing I like about Njoku is he's in his contract here. He's playing somewhere next year else, and he's probably going to get paid by that team. So if he goes into the right situation, say he goes to Jacksonville and goes back down to Florida, and a team that's just not really had that true number 1 receiver, and he could take that big step forward because him coming out of Miami, he was extremely raw, right? Extremely raw. So we knew he was going to be a 3-year window, and he missed his 3rd year due to injury. So here he is, year 5. Which isn't a crazy year to break out. I mean, he could easily fall in that Darren Waller category of a year 27 breakout player because he has the athleticism to do it. So I like Njoku, and I really like his value right now because he's going so late in startups. I mean, you're talking round 18, 20 in startups. Together. So I like Njoku as a throw-in player for any trade I can make wherever that team has it. But the tight end you want to own is Bryant. And Hooper just worries me. I think he could be a reliable tight. Hooper's going to fall in the category. He's really going to be good for the Cleveland Browns. He's not going to be good for any fantasy football team. So to me, the only person I really want to go out here and buy is the big former receiver who won the John Mackey Award, and that's going to be Harrison Bryant.
Right. I can dig it. Brad, anything else to preach on these Browns tight ends?
Yeah, it's interesting. Harrison Bryant coming in as a rookie last year from a small school. The guy comes in and gets a 60 to 70% snap share every game. They're running 2-3 tight ends all the time in that offense, and you saw him get some targets. Now, I'm leaning a little more towards Austin Hooper in the short term, but definitely Harrison Bryant in the long term because you've heard Kevin Stefanski come out and say, hey, look, we we know what we've got in Austin Hooper. We want to get him more involved in the offense, and we're going to figure out how to do it. And I think they're going to figure out how to bring him more into the ring game. Now, do I think that's going to warrant anything relevant other than a streaming tight end from 7 to 15? Tight end 7, tight end 15? Probably not. But I do think there is some value there if you've got a team of streaming tight ends that you're looking to play. I definitely agree that Harrison Bryant is a long-term that, because you see he's a great blocker already. He's got some receiving chops already. Like, he's a guy that has the upside that you can get dirt cheap right now.
I think Mark Andrews is pretty self-explanatory, 4 to 6 range. Only thing I got to throw in there, it's just funny how tight end works compared to receiver. You got the tight end 5 scores as many points as your like wide receiver 39, 40 in PPR leagues. It's just funny the difference in positions, things like that. Rich, let's get you out of here. Last question. I got 2 for you. It's Sunday morning, man. I don't know if you're in the office, where you're at, watching Red Zone, the ticket. If you're about to watch your Browns on Monday Night Football, whatnot, what's your go-to like pump up song? Are you an Aerosmith fan? Are you, Steven Tyler? Yeah. Are you Little John? Or you got that crunk juice? What is your style?
I'm not either of those bands, but I am. When it comes to music, I am very broad. It could be from punk rock, to Rage Against the Machine, to some people might see as corny as Dave Matthews. Like right now, I don't know how I never heard of them, but like right now, the only thing I'm listening to is the Bleachers. It's a band I just discovered them, and I have no idea how I didn't know them before because I can't stop listening to them. So like to me, if I had to pick one, if I'm trying to get like pumped up, I don't know. It's probably like a Rage Against the Machine song because it's one of my all-time favorite bands in the history of bands. If I'm trying to get pumped up, it might be a rap songs that can be going sometimes too. So it's kind of hard for me because I treat music so specially. It's like I don't judge. I just love it so much.
Well, I'm going to ask you one more question then. What's the best concert you've ever been to?
The best concert I've ever been to. I've been to so many. I've been literally probably 200 concerts. Tool. I mean, Dave Matthews puts on a really good concert, musically wise, but Tool was pretty amazing. But if I had to pick the best is the Rage Against the Machine back in the 90s. That was just like the whole place is just moving in unison, and that's music just defined my youth. So the best concert of all time, Rage Against the Machine, all time.
All right, Rich, we want to get to know you a little bit more. You got the burgers on the grill. You're eating the brats, the hot dogs. Let's say before we eat, we're cooking. Let's have a drink. Get ready. You set your lineups. You're going back and forth. Oh, do I start Odell? Blah, blah, blah. What is your drink? Are you a bourbon guy? We talked a little earlier. That was your sweet spot with Bryant, our co-host.
No, that was Bryant's sweet spot. That's not my sweet spot.
You just participated. Okay.
Yeah.
What's your drink, man?
My beverage, it's a vodka tonic, 2 limes. That's my drink. My favorite drink of all time is a blood orange margarita. That's my favorite drink of all time. I tell people I could run a marathon and then drink that and be refreshed and then be drunk 5 seconds later. But like in the house, like a casual drink, like if I'm relaxing with some friends or anything, it's a vodka tonic, more vodka than tonic. Throw the 2 limes in there, get a little bit sweeter, but that's my go-to drink.
Ooh, I can drink beer all day. Vodka I can drink all day, and it ends in problems. So, dude, Rich,
my beer of summer though are those Natter Days. It's crazy. I'm telling you, that's my stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, my brother-in-law was like, "Dude, you gotta try this." I was like, "Dude, I'm not trying it. It's a Natty Light." I'm like, "I'm not trying it." And then he gave me one. I was like, "Oh, beer of 2021 summer out by the pool, Natter Days all day."
I just feel like it's almost like Steel Reserve. It's not Steel Reserve. Let me take that back. But I just feel like
around the corner. It's flavored water. Is what it is. It's flavored water. But water goes down smooth, and I'm going to take it.
Hell yeah, buddy. Dude, thanks for coming on. Dynasty Nerds always popping off. The GM tool. You're all over. You're everywhere and anywhere. Thank you for taking time out of your day for us, buddy. Anything before we get out of here? Any words of encouragement? Maybe a quote? What you got for us?
Well, first, Brad, Matt, I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure to sit here and talk Dynasty with you guys. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I'll have to do it again sometime. And thanks for the love on Dynasty Nerds. We're just here to help you win your Dynasty team, Dynasty leagues. Quote to go out, man. If for Dynasty, man, it's just if you're staying stagnant, you're getting passed up. And a lot of teams can look sexy on paper, but it's not about that. It's about winning ships. I think it's the one thing that gets lost in Dynasty, I think, these days is the trying to win as a community grows. It's like draft picks, youth. It's all about the titles, man. Don't ever forget that, because nobody cares about second place. Nobody cares about. No, you're not. I said this on the podcast. You're not sitting there telling your grandkids about how many times you came in second, how much money you won. It's all about the titles. Don't ever forget that. Either you're competing for a title or you're reloading to get back there to compete. So if you're staying stagnant, you're getting passed up.
As good as my win percentage looks, I'm trying to level up. Real quick, Rich, we got a guy in one of our leagues. I want to give him a shout out, Zach Grayson. You can't do a damn thing without him talking about the Dynasty Nerds GM tool, bringing up a trade. He will not do anything unless he is using your tool. So mad props to you guys for what y'all have done.
It's all going to get better.
Yeah, you've killed the game, dude, and we're all loving it. Brad, send us out of here, my man.
Hey, we had a blast at Canton. If we didn't get to see you this year, please make it. Everybody had a good time at the party. The expo was great. All the panels were excellent. I sat in on most of them. So if you didn't make it this year, make sure you keep your eyes out. It's at the FF Expo on Twitter or thefantasyfootballexpo.com online. So check it out.
All right, guys. Till next week, hit it hard, hit it fast, all gas, no brakes. Fantasy Football Fair. Subscribe, like, leave a message, hit us up on social media. We're here to help you. Fantasy football's best kept secret, and it's only getting better. Yeah.